So this past weekend, Snow White dropped in theaters and it did not do well at the box office, especially compared to its budget. And there's been a lot of discussion. Was it just that this was a bad idea? Was it the controversy? Is there fatigue when it comes to these Disney live-action remakes? Well, today we're not going to be bothered by those sorts of discussions. We're going to be looking at an article saying 11 Disney live-action remakes that we actually want. This is coming from Entertainment Weekly. 11 more. And I think that's so funny because everyone's like, there's way too many Disney live action remakes. Stop doing this. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Do something original. Also, here's 11 more that I want. 25 of them isn't enough. We need 36 of these deals, or whatever the number is. Like, we want more. 11 more to be specific. As we go into these, my criteria. Does this story lend itself well to live action? Does live action serve this particular story? And since they tend to make most of them blockbusters, would it work well as a blockbuster? Has it been long enough that it makes sense to remake it? Like Moana being remade 10 years later is weird. And then third one, and this can counterbalance the statement of has it been long enough, but is it a movie that it was a really good idea for a film that just failed as an animated movie? It would potentially work better in this format. With all that said, let's dive into this. First one on their list, it is Hercules, 1997. Now, right off the bat, we know Hercules as a character lends himself really well to live action. So generically speaking, Hercules absolutely can work in live action. We saw his legendary journeys in the 90s with Kevin Sorbo, watched it all regularly, and then we got Xena Warrior Princess out of it. So in that sense, this one I think there's a lot of potential simply because it's Hercules, mythology, all that fun stuff. But also, we're talking about this version of Hercules. And I think that's where it gets tricky because I don't feel like this Hercules is like that. I feel like that's one of the least well-regarded Disney Renaissance films. That, I mean, it still did well and some people still like it, but like, I don't know of any of the songs from this movie that kind of became a part of the popular culture and stood the test of time. So we're talking about adapting this Disney musical. I just don't know that there's demand for it. I know that they've already started working on it. The Russos are involved in some way. I mean, maybe that's totally on the back burner because of this whole Avengers thing they're working on. But you know, they were in the mix on it. I just don't think there's that. Like, I think the Renaissance is the prime era to go and adapt because of multi-generational movie going. It's nostalgia for me, so I want to take my kids to it. Those ones work really well in that regard. And it's a big adventure, so it could work. But the specific version, I just don't think this is the most beloved version. So if you're just doing a new version of Hercules or reimagining, it's not really a remake because you're just going back to the Hercules mythology. So I think this, like, doing the musical version of it, I just don't, like, there's just also aren't the songs that people love or anything like that. So I don't get it. Then we have Treasure Planet. I'll say this, I'm not a Treasure Planet fan. When it came out, I was 20 years old. I wasn't going to go see Disney animated films at the time. So I watched it for the first time just a few years ago. And I wasn't really crazy about it. And then, watched it last year as well. So I've seen it a few times in the history of my YouTube channel. And I just never really got all that into it. With that said, this is probably a movie that is prime to be remade in live action. Because it's Treasure Island, except as steampunk. Like, those are just compatible ideas that make for big, gigantic spectacle. That it's a big adventure, that you can make it in a realm that it's for the whole family. There's heroes, there's villains, there's the anti-heroes. There's kind of all of the different archetypes of great storytelling. So I think there actually is a good bit of potential here. And because it's not so beloved that you have to stick immediately to exactly what was there before, there's room to adapt it. And so as soon as you're doing spaceships and swashbuckling with sci-fi, there's so much there that I think can be a big, gigantic hit movie. So is the demand big enough for what the budget would need to be? I don't know if it would work in that regard, because it is just so, not globe-trotting, universe-trotting, galaxy-trotting. So I don't know if you could pull that off, but it is the sorts of materials that make for great PG-13 family blockbusters. Then we have The Black Cauldron, and this one, if you say, has it been long enough? Yes. Would it translate to live action? Yes, it would. If you don't know, The Black Cauldron is actually based off of a book, a series of books. Back in the day, I actually read them. My sister had all of them, so I read a couple of them. But I've only seen the movie one time whenever I did my ranking of all the Disney or Disney animated films, and it was a film that was actually very difficult to watch when I was growing up because they didn't release it like they did other films. So for all those reasons, immediately, this is a film that has certain potential, but also like it turns into the category of like, it wouldn't even be a Disney live action remake. It's really, should we do a proper adaptation of the book or books? And that's really what it is. And so I don't even know if I'd even put it in the same category because the books are more famous and better regarded than the animated film. The animated film is one of the least watched Disney animated films because it flopped at the box office and then they didn't release it. So, like, just stop and think about this. This is a rare example where I actually read the book. The movie came out during my childhood, and I never saw the film until just a few years ago because I couldn't. So I don't even know if I'd consider it a Disney live action remake. It's just a new adaptation of the book. So it doesn't even need to be Disney. Just get the rights to someone else, do something like that. That's where I would see there's something interesting there. But this is like, it's classic fantasy. It works great in live action. And trying to do it as a 90-minute animated film, which is what they did, it feels like the Cliff Notes version of this big epic story. So don't do that, but an adaptation of the book, there's something to that. The Princess and the Frog. This one, it's only been 16 years, so I would put that in the category of too soon. If they did this under $100 million as a smaller, mid-budget romance, they know that it's not trying to appeal to everybody. We're like, let's do like a tighter film, smaller film for a more niche audience. There might be something to that. I'm not a fan of The Princess and the Frog, so if they announce this, that does nothing for me. Like, I'm just not interested. If they announce they're going to do it and it's a $200 million budget, no, absolutely not. That's insane. But it's just too soon. So I don't think you should do this one. I don't know that, a romance with a frog plays better if it's in live action. Like, I don't see that. So generally speaking, this feels like a pretty big no to me. But I could be biased just because I'm not crazy about the movie. Then we've got Atlantis, the Lost Empire. And I'll say right now, this is the one that I would say is my number one. This is my number one right here of the one that is like, yes, it has been over 20 years. So say enough times passed that it could make sense. The original was underviewed. It wasn't particularly popular, but it's not because it's a bad idea. And then the nature of the film, it's like a combination of Stargate and Avatar, of the mythologies of it, but tying into the like lost city of Atlantis. So right there, it's sci-fi, it's mythological, it's a big epic story, it's a quest to get somewhere. This is all the ingredients for a hit PG-13 family adventure film. So to me, I see this one, I go, this is a prime example of a movie that actually can be served by live action. It's been over 20 years, and it didn't do all that well, so a reimagining of it could be very, very cool. A Jerry Bruckheimer remake of Atlantis would be a match made in heaven. Exactly. Like, you think Pirates of the Caribbean with Atlantis, that energy, I think it just screams hit film. So I think this is a prime example of one that actually makes sense. Then we have Brave. This is another one where I'm not the biggest fan of Brave. It's also, we're moving in, they were a little bit loose on their list. This is a Pixar film, but I'm not a big fan of Brave. With the nature of it, it could work in live action, but I don't think it's been long enough for the same reason that I don't think you should do with How to Train Your Dragon. Even when I talk about Brave, I usually use How to Train Your Dragon as an example of a movie with a similar plot and similar themes that did it better. So I just don't think Brave is a good enough film to justify doing this. And the movie that is the great example of what this movie's going for, How to Train Your Dragon, came out 2 years earlier, and I think that one is too soon. So this is another one where, like, I don't see it. I don't know what new is added there. I think it could work in that format because you just need a more limited number of talking or human-like animals in it, but I just don't see it. Robin Hood, this is silly. No. Like, can Robin Hood work in live action? Yes. There are many examples of it. But that's, once again, much like with Hercules, we're not talking about generically can the source material work, it's can this version work. And as soon as you're talking about a movie that is all talking animals in live action, like every character in this is an animal, a talking animal, why would you do it live action? Like, why are we gonna Lion King this thing? It makes no sense. And it's the sort of thing where you're looking for what's the thing that we haven't picked yet. So you're fleshing out your list. What's a movie that people love? Robin Hood. Robin Hood would be great live action. It doesn't make any sense because it would be an animated movie. It's this Lion King all over again. It doesn't make any sense to do it. And they worked with Jungle Book. And maybe there's some Jungle Bookification because Robin Hood also is a little bit episodic. So maybe you could find a stronger through line for the plot or something. But this is just pretty ridiculous to me. Disney's American Legends. Gotta admit, I don't think I've seen this one. I guess it's straight to DVD anthology of animated shorts. I saw versions of things like this back in the day, but I don't believe I've seen this one, so I can't really comment on it. If it's a series of shorts and you're just doing like an anthology movie of figures of American legends, just do that. Like the idea that it's a remake of this, it just feels like we're stretching to fill out a list. Ted Moana. Way too soon. Just way too soon to do this. So, will this do better than Snow White next year? I'm sure it will. By probably a lot. Because it's more popular and it doesn't seem to be problematic. But this is an example of just one that's totally unnecessary. Kids are still watching Moana. My 6-year-old is obsessed with Moana and has a Moana themed room and wears her Moana shirt and dresses all the time. The original, per 1,000 conversations we've had on the channel, is still one of the most watched movies. There's just no need to remake it. There's nothing new being added. It feels like we're taking advantage of the audience by doing this. And then Emperor's New Groove. It's been 25 years, so I guess it's been long enough. I don't know what is added. Because it's not really like an adventure story that lends itself to live action with like a Robin Hood or Hercules, Atlantis. It's just not that. It's like a buddy comedy. What is added? How does it work better if they're in live action? So I don't see this one at all. Also, I'm not as I don't like this one as much as a lot of other people. So I kind of, just for that reason, kind of go, well, what are we doing here? But I just don't see it. I don't know what is being added. I don't understand. Oh man, think of how good it would be if they were real actors. And even kind of like so much of what drives it is David Spade himself, the lead performance. And so if you remove him, his sarcasm, like who's replacing him? Like that's the thing. That's like the voice performances make the movie, and those guys are almost certainly much too old now to play those parts. So I'm going to go with a no on this one. Final one on there. Disney nerd saving the day. Almost botched this. Tangled. Falling in the same categories: How to Train Your Dragon, Brave, Princess and the Frog. Less than 20 years, I think, is too soon. Is there something in this one that if you did it like on the lower end of the budget, that could it work? I think there's something there because of Flynn Rider. There's enough Flynn Rider adventure where he's doing heists, he's trying to save the day, he's escaping prison. That lends itself well to actual stunts, someone riding on a horse, parkouring across built rooftops. So I think there might be something to it, but it also it's a princess love story at its core, more so than the adventure. And I don't know that seeing a human there changes it. Like, it doesn't make it better. So generally speaking, I'm going to say this is another one where I go, I just don't see it. I don't see what is added here. That the format that they put it in, an animated musical, seems like our strongest package for this type of film. And we don't gain something new by going to live action, other than taking advantage of people that'll buy a ticket for nostalgia. So that's our list on there. And yeah, they said they had 11. It's more like maybe 4. And even of the 4, really kind of like 2. There's a few that it's not like you can maybe see it working or something like that. But generally speaking, there are not 11 more Disney movies that need to be made into live action. If on this list there was a couple of them that I would say these two actually make sense, it would be Atlantis and it would be Treasure Planet, as ones I would perceive of actual Disney live action remakes. And then I think you could also throw in there The Black Cauldron, but I don't even think it needs to be Disney, and I wouldn't think of it as a Disney live action remake. It would be a new adaptation of the books that's done right and much more faithful this time around. In the comments, I wouldn't actually mind a Sword in the Stone remake. I love King Arthur, Merlin's story, and we haven't had much of that in live action. So this is another one that kind of falls into that same category as Hercules and Robin Hood, where it's Disney's adaptation of timeless tales, mythology. And so there's so much room for a great King Arthur story. But does Sword in the Stone, like, are we actually doing Sword in the Stone? That very specific little episode of the climax is him pulling the sword out, and as our Arthur movie. If Disney was going to do a King Arthur story that is a PG-13, $250 million film, would you want it to be end at that point in time, or would you actually want to see more than that? I think you'd want to see more than that. And so I would imagine I would be interested in Disney's King Arthur. I don't know that I want to see the movie Sword in the Stone. Sword in the Stone is very episodic, of like, it's like a series of these little anecdotes, and this one's he's underwater, this one he's doing this one he's doing this, and then he pulls the sword out of the stone. Versus, if we're going to do this, I want to see their version of King Arthur. CM Waters says Hunchback of Notre Dame remake would help the film get around the silly moments that were only the real problem with the original. Yeah, I just don't know if it's too dark. Was it Victor Hugo? Like, it's just, that's heavy stuff. And They had to have the silly in there to make up for how dark it was, but then the silly seems so out of place because it's so heavy. Say Big Hero 6, but we haven't had enough superhero films. Like, yeah, like I think that's it. Like Big Hero 6, almost the thing that makes it stand out and interesting is that it is an animated superhero film. Same with Incredibles. That's their almost thing that makes them pop. We don't have nearly as many animated ones. And as soon as you go, we got kids in robot suits battling supervillains. You go, wow, it's like little kid Iron Man. And I think it loses its distinction a little bit. What about The Incredibles, Sean? I mean, it's the Fantastic Four, so you know it can work. Like, have we ever seen like a successful superhero story in live action? Of course it can work, but I just don't know that, like, you have the perfect version, and so people still love it, they still watch it. It doesn't need the version. It just becomes like, can you do it? It's kind of like, can you do it with Beauty and the Beast? You can, and it's a very proficient film. Like, it's professionally made. It's slick. But at the end of the day, if you want to watch Beauty and the Beast, you just normally watch the original one. And that's the way people talk about that with Aladdin. And like, it's like, okay, cool novelty. I've seen it in new format now, but now I'm going to watch the actual one that's a classic. That's what would happen with The Incredibles. It would be a perfectly fine movie that was well made, but it wouldn't be better.
Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.